Picture this. It's a cold November evening in Llandudno, North Wales, and Nigel Farage is standing on a stage in front of hundreds of people absolutely fired up about Rachel Reeves' budget. He's not pulling punches, he's not mincing words, and he's certainly not bothering with parliamentary niceties. He's calling it a taxpayer exodus, warning that Britain's brightest and best are fleeing the country because of crippling taxes, and painting a picture of an economy that's driving wealth creators away faster than you can say non-dom status. Whether you love him or hate him, and trust me, there's no middle ground with Farage, the man knows how to work a crowd and deliver a message that cuts through. Welcome to UK Political Insight, where today we're breaking down Nigel Farage's major rally in Wales, his blistering attack on Rachel Reeves' budget, and the very real question at the heart of it all. Before you continue, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more updates on this channel. Thank you. Is Britain actually experiencing a taxpayer exodus? And if so, what does that mean for the rest of us? Grab a brew, settle in, because this one's gonna be a journey. So let's set the scene properly. Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, former Brexit champion, professional disruptor of British politics, decides to hold a major rally in Llandudno on the very day Rachel Reeves is delivering her autumn budget. That's not a coincidence. That's political theater at its finest. While Reeves is standing in the Commons announcing tax rises and spending cuts, Farage is in Wales telling a crowd that Labour's policies are driving people out of the country. It's counter-programming on a grand scale, and it's absolutely vintage Farage. He's not trying to offer detailed policy alternatives or nuanced economic analysis. He's going straight for the gut with a simple, powerful message. Labour's budget will attack ordinary Brits by driving away the rich people who pay the most tax, which means everyone else will have to pay more. Simple, punchy, effective. Now, before we dive into what Farage actually said, let's talk about the stats he's referencing because they're genuinely eye-opening. According to recent analysis, around 270,000 taxpayers are projected to leave the UK in Rachel Reeves's first year as Chancellor. 270,000. That's not a small number. That's a mid-sized city's worth of people who've decided that Britain's tax environment is sufficiently unappealing that they're willing to uproot their entire lives and move somewhere else. Now, not all of these people are millionaires. The figure includes everyone from high earners in finance and tech to retirees looking for sunnier climes with lower cost of living. But a significant chunk of these people are exactly the kind of wealth creators and high earners that economies need to generate tax revenue, create jobs, and drive innovation. Farage's central argument, and it's one that resonates with a lot of people, even if they don't like him personally, is that when you drive away your highest earners, you don't just lose those specific individuals. You lose the tax revenue they would have paid, the businesses they would have started, the jobs they would have created, and the economic activity they would have generated. And when that tax revenue disappears, the government doesn't just shrug and accept lower revenues, they make up the difference by taxing everyone else more. So the middle class, the squeezed middle, the people who can't afford fancy accountants or the option to relocate to Dubai, they're the ones who end up footing the bill. It's a compelling argument because there's a logic to it that's hard to deny. Let's get into what Farage actually said at the rally because it's worth examining in detail. He started by explaining why people are leaving. They left because taxes are too high, because laws have changed, but they left because if you're young and want to set up a business and work hard and do well, Portugal, Italy, Greece, the UAE, Dubai, Australia, America. These are now more tempting places for our brightest and best young people to go. That's a pretty damning indictment of Britain's business environment right there. He's not just talking about retirees moving to Spain for the weather, he's talking about young entrepreneurs, the kind of people who should be building the next generation of British businesses, looking at the UK and thinking, you know what, I'll have better opportunities literally anywhere else. And here's the uncomfortable truth, he's not entirely wrong. If you're a young person with skills, ambition, and the ability to work remotely or set up a business anywhere in the world, Britain's tax environment isn't particularly attractive right now. Income tax rates are high, national insurance contributions are substantial, corporation tax has been rising, capital gains tax is under scrutiny, and the overall regulatory burden is significant. Compare that to somewhere like Dubai where there's no income tax, or Portugal which offers tax breaks for new residents, or the US where the entrepreneurial culture is much stronger and venture capital is more readily available. If you've got options, and talented young people increasingly do, Britain's not always the obvious choice anymore. Farage continued with what I think is the emotional heart of his argument. It is a tragedy for our country that huge numbers of young, bright, intelligent people are leaving. You can hear the genuine frustration there, and I think it's something that resonates across the political spectrum. Regardless of your views on tax policy or the role of government, surely we can all agree that Britain should be a place where talented young people want to stay and build their futures. When we're losing our brightest and best to other countries, that's a problem. It's a brain drain, and historically, countries that experience sustained brain drains struggle economically for generations. Then he gets to the fiscal argument, and this is where it gets really interesting. If our rich people leave, they're also our biggest taxpayers. And if our biggest taxpayers leave, that means that everybody else earning average incomes has to pay more. This is the part that makes a lot of people uncomfortable because it touches on a fundamental tension in progressive taxation. Yes, the wealthy should pay more. Most people across the political spectrum agree with that principle. But there's a point at which if you tax high earners too heavily, they just leave. And unlike average earners who are much more rooted in place because of family, community, schools, local jobs, high earners often have the resources and flexibility to relocate. They can work remotely, they can set up businesses in other countries, and they can establish residency in other countries. And when they do, you don't get to tax them anymore. The stats actually back this up, and it's one of the most politically inconvenient truths in tax policy. The top 1% of earners in the UK pay around 30% of all income tax revenue. The top 10% pay around 60%. So a relatively small number of people are generating a disproportionately large share of government revenue. If even a modest percentage of those people leave, the economic impact is enormous. And that's exactly what seems to be happening. The 270,000 figure Farage cited isn't just about numbers of people, it's about the tax revenue that's walking out the door with them. Now, let's pause here and address the obvious counterargument because it's important. Critics of Farage's position, and there are many, will say that we shouldn't be held hostage by wealthy people threatening to leave if we tax them fairly. They'll argue that public services need funding, that inequality needs addressing, and that the social contract requires those who've benefited most from society to contribute most. And you know what? That's also a valid argument. We're not going to solve this in a YouTube video, but it's worth acknowledging that there are legitimate points on both sides. The problem is that Rachel Reeves is trying to thread an impossible needle. She needs to raise significant revenue to fund public services and reduce the deficit, but she also promised not to raise taxes on working people, at least not the main ones like income tax, VAT, and employee national insurance. So she's going after wealth, capital gains, inheritance, employer contributions, non-DOMs, private equity carried interest, all the things that primarily affect higher earners. But when you do that aggressively, which is what this budget appears to be doing, you risk exactly the outcome Farage is warning about. People leave. They take their money, their businesses, their tax contributions, and they go somewhere more welcoming. Let's talk about the non-DOMs changes specifically because they're a perfect example of this dynamic. Non-DOMs are people who live in the UK but claim their permanent home is elsewhere, which means they don't pay UK tax on their foreign income. Labour has essentially abolished this status, which sounds great from a fairness perspective. Why should wealthy foreigners living in London get special tax treatment? But here's the thing, those non-DOMs were paying a lot of tax on their UK income, they were spending money in the UK economy, they were often running businesses that employed British workers, and now a significant number of them are leaving. Italy just introduced a very attractive tax regime for foreign wealthy, so did Greece. Portugal's had one for years. These countries are actively competing for the wealthy residents that Britain is pushing away. The UAE that Farage mentioned, particularly Dubai, has become an absolute magnet for wealthy Brits. No income tax, sunny weather, excellent infrastructure, a business-friendly environment, and a large expat community that makes it feel less foreign. If you're a successful entrepreneur or finance professional looking at a 50% marginal tax rate in the UK versus 0 in Dubai, the calculation's pretty straightforward. Sure, Dubai has its downsides, but from a pure financial perspective, it's a no-brainer. And thousands of Brits have made exactly that calculation in recent years. Australia and America, the other destinations Farage mentioned, appeal for different reasons. Australia offers a high quality of life, English is the primary language, and while taxes aren't low, they're competitive, and the lifestyle factors are attractive. America, despite its many problems, still has the world's most dynamic economy, the deepest pools of capital for entrepreneurs, and a culture that genuinely celebrates business success in a way Britain sometimes struggles with. If you're a tech entrepreneur or someone in a cutting-edge field, Silicon Valley or New York or Austin offers opportunities that London simply can't match, and the tax environment's often better too. Now, Farage is making these points at a rally, which means he's going for maximum emotional impact rather than nuanced policy analysis. But the core issue he's highlighting is real, and it's something Labour needs to grapple with. You can't just tax your way to prosperity if the people you're taxing have the option to leave. And in an increasingly globalized world where remote work is common and wealthy people are mobile, they absolutely have that option. Let's talk about the timing of this rally because it's politically brilliant from Farage's perspective. He's holding it on Budget Day, which guarantees media coverage because journalists are looking for reaction and alternative perspectives. He's doing it in Wales, which is symbolically important because Wales has been a Labour stronghold for decades, but reform is making inroads there too. And he's focusing on an issue, taxation and the economy, where Labour is vulnerable because their policies are already unpopular and they haven't even fully implemented them yet. Farage knows his audience. The people at that rally in Llandudno aren't necessarily wealthy themselves, they're not the ones moving to Dubai, but they understand the argument that if you drive away the rich, everyone